All right. What is up? Welcome to another night. Little live coding action. Tom McGurl, thank you for coming by. Been enjoying doing this. Tonight we had a cool series scheduled, I think, tonight. If you've been following along, we've been building a craft beer cataloging application using Recoil.js, React.js, and Expo React Native. Today we're going to be doing something a little different, but kind of in the same vein. Today we're going to be spinning up a backend for that app, but we're not going to be spinning up a server. At least we're not going to host it. We're going to let AWS host it. We are going to be spinning up a serverless backend using AWS Lambda, DynamoDB. We're going to write that in Nodejs with Typescript. I'm really excited for this. It's something I haven't really done. Little disclaimer, I gave a little bit of a look into it just so I wasn't totally unprepared. And we do use it at my current job at Electric AI, but I've never personally spun up anything serverless, so I'm excited to try that out, and I'm excited to do it here with y'all. So yeah, again, if you want to catch up, you don't need to have watched the last series. That's not a prerequisite for this. Again, this can be anything. We're going to be spinning it up from scratch. We are going to use it to back that app, but again, you don't have to have followed along up till now. This is a kind of a fresh one-off video, so I'm excited to get this out there. I got the Twitter URL down below where you can follow along. Follow me on Twitter. You'll get updates for when I'm going live. I got the GitHub URL that'll host the repos for this stuff. I open source this stuff so that everyone can join along. And you'll see here in a second, because we're about to get started, I got the GitHub URL, the Twitter URL there. On our starting soon screen here, you can see the YouTube channel. Check that out. It's going to be cool. We're going to be posting all the videos there. So yeah, so let's just go ahead and dive right in. Before we do that though, I forgot to mention, I am sticking with the schedule of Tuesdays from 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern time. I'm hoping to add more days as this gets kind of like, more fun and have more time on my hands. But for now, we'll be sticking to that. So yeah, thanks. And again, follow on Twitter and you'll get those notifications. All right, so let's jump in. So as I mentioned, what we're going to be doing is building a serverless REST API with Node.js, AWS Lambda, and DynamoDB. And the reason I want to do this is we've been building in the past series, and again, you don't have to have followed up until now, we've been building out this craft beer cataloging app. And I have the server started here so we can kind of see what I'm doing. But up until now, we've basically had all this stuff locally on the device. So if I share this with you here, we have our app here. I'm going to run the iOS simulator. And what I want to do is I want to make a backend for this to host these devices. And as I mentioned, you don't have to have this app. You don't have to have followed along up until now because you can make this AWS Lambda serverless API applicable to anything you're building. We're basically going to build an API backed by DynamoDB, which is a non-relational wide column store. It's going to allow us to store some data. It's going to allow us to query data. And we don't have to think about deploying it to a provider. We don't have to deploy to Heroku, or we don't have to deploy our own instance. We don't have to spin up Node and Express and write the routes. We're going to let Amazon handle that. And we'll go through that as we start to build out things. There are a lot of steps to this, so I'm hoping we can get it all done today. But if not, we'll go on till next week as well. But I think we'll be able to get a good portion of it. And I will, like I said, be posting this on YouTube this evening so that you can check it out. If you miss anything, you can rewind. You can watch it at whatever speed you want. I've seen in the comments some folks are listening at 1.7 speed, so I must sound like this really fast. I think that's awesome. If that works, I really appreciate that. So that's great. So right now I'm just loading up this application. This is just the one I'm thinking about. This is like the domain I'm going to be building for. Doesn't have to be what you're working with. But this is going to give me an idea of what I want to actually be storing. So right now I have these beers that we've been, if you followed in the previous examples, we've been adding. We have our screen here where we add new beers and we show them here. We have them sorted by brewery and sorted by style, but they're stored on the device. They're local. And what that means is if I spin up another instance of this app, which I can do by spinning up, for example, the web version, you're going to lose these, right? It's going to be a totally separate list because the web storage is different than the app storage. So what we want to do is if we want to persist this across all of our devices and have different instances pull from the same data, like so here you can see in my web version, I don't have any beers. And if I add a beer here, well, looks like that blew up. But if I were to add a beer here, it would be different, right? So we want to be able to share the beers across, and that's why I want this backend API. So let's just kind of take a look at what we're going to try to put in this API. So we're going to need an API to store these beers. The current things that I store for my beers or brews is the name, the brewery, the image. So we got the name here, the breweries here, the image, and the style and the rating. So I want to be able to put these things into a database so that when I load the app, I can request that data. And this app was built using Recoil.js, so it'd be cool for us to figure out how to actually make that request with Recoil. But again, today we're going to focus on just building the API. And you can make this applicable to anything you're building. So you don't have to store brews. You can kind of follow along and change it to whatever you want to store. But yeah, let's jump in. So let's talk about serverless here. So what we're going to do, I have the Amazon tutorial up here just in case we can follow along. I also have a tutorial from Serverless, the website, which is actually, Serverless is the service we're going to use. It basically helps you scaffold things out. And I have an example repo from the Serverless team of a TypeScript example. So before we dive in, let's talk about AWS Lambda a little bit. So we kind of have a good example here. So I'm going to zoom in on the diagram that they already made. So what serverless is going to allow us to do is it's going to allow us to host an API without thinking about the servers, without thinking about deployment, without thinking about scaling. So if this were an actual application, which it is not, I'm not going to be, getting rounds of funding for this or anything like that. This is a pretty cool app. You never know. But no, what I want to do is I want to play around and learn stuff, and that's what this is for. So what Lambda is going to allow us to do is it's going to allow us to ignore that stuff. And what we can do is we can focus on our code and focus on our use case. And so what we can do is AWS Lambda will allow us to write functions that get invoked either by an event that happens in our system, or in our case, we're going to use API Gateway so that we can make requests, just like a REST API. The other thing we're going to do here is we want to store that data. So we can store it and retrieve it, right? So when we create a new brew, we want to go up and store that. And then when we load our application, we want to be able to pull all of that data down. And so we're going to use DynamoDB for that. There's another database option with Amazon. There's a few, actually. The other more traditional one would be like using like a managed MySQL database or something like RDS, which is the relational data store from Amazon. But Dynamo works perfectly for our app. And that's because Dynamo is a non-relational wide column store. And what that means is it's really good for data that you don't have to do a lot of joins on and a lot of relationships. And we don't have a lot of relationships. We have some, like brewery has brews, things like that. But we're not really reflecting those relationships in the app. The only way that we're reflecting that in my app, in this case, is we're sorting on them. But the way we're handling that is we're taking all of the brews, and on the front end, we're doing that sorting. And it's not really a relationship. We're never actually querying for just a brewery and its brews. We may do that later, and Dynamo will actually work for that. But it's kind of perfect for what we need because we just want to get a list of all the brews. And in this case, we actually are just kind of doing like what we would call a scan of the database to pull down all of the information. We're not actually querying the database, where we would give it like an ID and say, give me this brew. Maybe eventually we do, but for now, we're not going to do that. So that's kind of perfect. And so the other benefit is I'm not going to have to, write my own Node server with Express, or maybe if you're in the Python world, you're using something like Django or Flask or Tornado or Fast API. We're just going to let Amazon handle that portion of it. They're going to handle the hosting of it. They're going to give us a URL, all that good stuff. The only thing we're going to do is write the functions that run given a specific route, and we're going to write the code for those functions. For example, storing the information in the database, looking at the requests, things like that. So let's get started. So the first thing I have to do, which is outlined here, is I have to install the Serverless Framework. Now, you don't need to use the Serverless Framework to use serverless with Amazon, but the benefit here of using the Serverless Framework is it gives us a really nice way to declare our Lambdas and our Dynamo. Normally, what I'd have to do to set up a Lambda is go into Amazon, and I'd have to first set up a Lambda, and I'd have to use the UI and do that. What this lets us do is it lets us establish that stuff through code. We can have, it's called infrastructure with code. So we can actually declare what our setup looks like in code, and you'll see that in a little bit. It's pretty verbose, but we'll kind of follow along. But it lets you declare the infrastructure with code so that you can say, hey, I want this many Lambdas hooked up to this. These are the handlers. This is the database. These are the routes. And it uses Amazon CloudFormation, which is infrastructure through code, that lets you kind of specify via a YAML file, or in this case, a TypeScript file, what your services should look like. And we'll dive into that. It's kind of easier if you see it. It's a little hard to talk about it. So first, let me install the serverless framework. And then we're going to have to create a user. And that's kind of where the trickiness of Amazon gets into place. But once all this stuff is set up, it's really great. So first what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this command, npm install serverless-g. That's going to install the serverless framework globally. So that's going to install it globally for my machine. So now I can run the command serverless, or SLS for short, anywhere on my machine. And if you didn't want to install things globally, there's options for that as well. If you're a type of person who likes your development environment like kind of separated and containerized, you could use something like Docker. Maybe you're on Windows, you can use, I believe it's Windows Subsystem or Windows Linux Subsystem, WLS. So I got a permission error. That's because it's global install. I just have to give that a sudo. So I'm just gonna do sudo, and it'll run that command. All right, so let's do this, and actually we'll just sudo this. All right, so that's going to install globally. And while that's happening, what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to create a user. So I've set up an Amazon account, but I want to create a user, and that user, we call that an Iam role. It manages permissions on an account. So let's go take a look at that and see what that's all about. So what I'm going to do is open up a new tab here, go to Amazon. I'm going to, not that Amazon, this Amazon. I'm going to go ahead and sign in here. Type in my password. Give me 1 second. I'll open that up over here. And so what the Iam role is going to allow us to do is kind of create a user with specific permissions. And the benefit of that is that we can kind of isolate what users have what permissions. And it just lets Amazon know who's accessing a particular application. So I could say, you know, this type of user, maybe it's a developer, has access to deploy, and then maybe there's an admin who has access to do other things. So, and you'll see we'll be able to create groups, which is kind of cool as well. So let me just put in my credentials here. All right. One second. All right, let's see what we got here. All right, this should be it, hopefully. Nope. All right, let's try this one. Got my password manager here. No, okay, give me 1 second. Here we go. Thank you. All right, so it's very secure. No, but this is good. We want to have some security here, right? We're dealing with stuff. And you're going to see at some point when I'm copying secrets, I'll have to move my thing off screen because I won't be able to share that, obviously. But you'll see how this gets started. So let me zoom in. You can see the absolute crazy amount of services that are in AWS. And it can be overwhelming, but don't get overwhelmed. We're going to navigate this together, right? I'm learning, you're learning. It's going to be fun. So the first thing we want to look at is Iam. And you may say, how did I know to do this? Well, when I first looked at this example on the AWS website, they have this section about creating, let me see if I think I gotta go back, about creating that. So I'm not hosting a static website, manage users. This is a section where they talk about authentication, but they also talk about Iam roles. So you have your user pool, create an Amazon Cognito user pool. This is for authentication, which we're not doing at the moment, but basically this is creating the Dynamo table. Here it is. Skipped right over it. Creating the Iam role. And so you're going to see as we do this, we're going to have to give this role different permissions. And I know the permissions I need to give it because I tried it out before earlier. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to pretend like I don't know, and you can see how I kind of whack-a-mole, where like it asks for one permission and we add it. error out, say we need another permission, we'll add it. And so this way we're adding only what's needed. And it's kind of a cool process that I went through, and I kind of want to share that with all of you, even though it might be boring, but I think it's a really cool experience. Okay, so I have my IAM roles, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to groups. I have groups developers, and so this in developers, I made this tester before. I've already set some permissions, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and, so you see I have IAM full access, Lambda function full access, and a few others. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just create a new role to try this out. So what I'll do is I'll create a new group. Let's call it live coders. And for now, what we're going to start out with is we're going to want to give it access to Lambda. We're going to give it AWS Lambda full access just to start, just so we have something. All right, so we're going to create that group. Now we want to create a user. So I have this brewbook tester. I'm going to go ahead and use this, but I'm going to point it to a different group. So I'm going to modify this here, and I'm going to remove it from this group. All right, and we're going to add it to the new group. And so all I did to create this was I said create new user. It makes you name it, and then you pick a group. So just like I'm doing now, except I'm just removing the old group. I'm going to add a new group. I'm going to add it to live coders, add to groups. So now we have live coders. That's our user. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the permissions for this user. I'm going to do that in a second because what I need to do is run this command. So here, if I go to serverless, and you can see there's a configuration set up where we input our configuration. So we installed serverless. So here it says run the below command and follow the prompt, so we can do that in a second. That we're not going to do because we don't have a pro account. So we're just going to do a search for serverless set IAM role. Typo there, sorry about that. IAM role. So this is the infrastructure you'll see in a second, but first what I want to do is I want to run, let's see. So I've stored a command here that I want to run to scaffold out our app. Let's try running that and see what happens. So this command is going to actually scaffold out our application. So right now I'm in my brewbook React Native folder, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up a folder. Hopefully that's not too small. There we go, that should be better. So I'm in my GitHub repos, this is where I put a lot of my stuff. And I'm going to paste this command. And so let's go through this command. What it's doing is SLS, which is the serverless command, create. I'm using the template AWS Nodejs Typescript. I'm giving a path Lambda test. I'm going to change that. We're going to call that, this is going to be the actual folder that it's going on. I'm going to call it brewbook API. And I'm going to name the API also brewbook API. So create that. All right. So now I'm just going to do a quick command for SLS config. And so what I want to do is I want to now input my IAM role into the serverless so that it knows when I do a deploy and things like that, that it's going to use the correct role. So let me just Google how to do that again. How to set IAM role for serverless framework. Okay, let's see. Customize serverless IAM policy. I had this here as well. Maybe it's in here. So let's see. IAM. No, nothing in here about it. I know there is a command. I ran it before. Let me see. Let's see if I can find it here on my machine where I ran it. Let's see. Give me 1 second. Yes, okay. So there's a command, serverless credentials. So let me just pull that up. Serverless config credentials. So this is the command I want. So here what I'm going to say is serverless config credentials. My provider is going to be just AWS. My key is going to be my Iam Role key, and my secret is going to be my Iam Role secret. Now you won't be able to see that because I'm going to have the secret off screen, but I will show you what the key is here. So I'm going to go to live coders. This is the group name. I want to go to the specific user. So users, brewbook tester, and then I have my security credentials. And so you can see my access key here. I can deactivate these if I want. So I'm going to do that. And what I can do, well, let's make this one active. And I need to create a new access key. So let me close that, delete that. I'll delete this one. And I'll create a new key. So I'm not going to show you my secret. I'm just going to move this off screen really quick, but I'm going to copy that. So first I'm copying my key here, and I'll type this part out so you can see it, and then I'll just move it off screen to enter my secret. So again, it's serverless config credentials, and then provider AWS, and then key, looks like I'm going to post my key, and then secret. And I'm just going to move this off screen real quick while I post my secret. All right, let's open this up. Okay. And it's setting that up. I'm just going to clear this here. All right. There we go. And I can close this. Okay. So there we go. I set that up. You're not going to be able to see the secret here, which is good for me. Okay, so my IMA role is set, and it's now hooked up to my serverless, and that'll allow me to actually run commands. So the first thing we're going to do is let's take a look at the repo that I created, right? So that would be under brewbook API. Let's just pop this open. And you would call it whatever you want. So whatever API you're building, maybe you're building an API that you want to store your favorite comic books, or maybe you want to store a list of to-dos. Maybe you're building a to-do app, you know, like every other front-end thing. Actually, I don't even need these anymore. So it's whatever you're trying to do with it. Do whatever you want. You could store wines. Maybe you want to store your favorite foods, anything. And you'll see that the properties are, because we're using a non-relational database where we don't really need to define a schema in advance, we can put whatever keys we want, and we can change it whenever we need to. So that's one of the super cool things about this, I think. All right, let me just adjust this here a bit. Adjust this a bit. There we go. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at this code. So what we have here is what it's scaffolded out. So you'll see it scaffolded out a Webpack config, which we don't need to worry about right now. We're using Typescript, so you can see the TS files. And so one thing that stands out is usually with serverless, it generates a serverless.yaml, which is just like JSON or Markdown. YAML is a type of file that lets you specify kind of configuration. But in our case, because we use the TypeScript version, it actually specifies the configuration using a typed object. So here it's saying, can I find model server AWS or its corresponding type declarations? That can be solved by us just installing, probably just installing the types for that, but we'll do that in a second. We probably just need to run npm install. So what I'm going to do is in here, I'm going to run npm I. That should install our dependencies. And while that is happening, let's take a look at what this is. Let's take a look at what it's actually doing. I'm just going to subtract that there. Okay, so we have our serverless configuration. This is kind of verbose, right? There's a lot going on here. I went through this for a while and kind of tried to figure out all the things that it was doing, and it's doing a lot. So we're going to go through it and we'll try to figure it out together. So the first thing is you have your service name. And in this case, it's Brewbook API. We have a framework version that was scaffolded out for us. It has some information about Webpack. That's just kind of the custom handling. Plugins, we're using Serverless Webpack, so it's listing the plugin there, which is pretty cool. Provider, so we're saying we're using AWS because with serverless, you could use other providers. So you could be using Google Cloud Functions. You could be using Azure Functions. We've chosen to use AWS, and maybe we'll try this out with Azure Functions and try it out with Google Cloud Functions and just see how they differ. AWS is just the one I'm most familiar with, just from having used it at work a little bit, but also it's been around for a while, so it's pretty robust. But yeah, I definitely would like to try the others. Maybe we can do a video where after we've done it, we can compare and contrast the pros and cons of the different providers. I'm liking that serverless as a framework can abstract a lot of the work we're gonna have to do. But you'll see once we start doing more, we're gonna be getting into the UI and clicking around. And the AWS UI has been around for a while, and credit to them. I don't know how they made a UI for that many services. It's not the best, but for what it has to do, it kind of is pretty sweet. So check that out. All right, awesome. So now what we have here are plugins. We have our provider again. The runtime, we're using Node.js 12, so we're gonna get the benefits of using the latest node, so we can use async await, right? We can use our import syntax. You'll see that in a second. We're using API gateway. Minimum compression size, we can look this up, and you can see here it's kind of typed, but it's basically, we'll have to look up some of these properties. I'm not even sure what they're doing. Minimum compression size for API gateway, if I were to guess, it's the minimum compression size. Environment, these are environment variables. So we're going to add environment variables here. Once we have a Dynamo database, we'll add the name of it here. Once we have an S3 bucket, which I'll get into in a minute why we're going to need an S3 bucket, we'll put that here as well. Any other environment variables can go right there, and then they can be accessed in our code. Here's the cool part, the handlers. This is what tells Lambda when to hit your actual endpoints. And so here we're using an API. We're using Lambda for an API, but you don't have to. You can have a Lambda function that is just a pure function, and all Lambdas should be pure functions, right? Because there's no running state, right? These servers are spun up quickly. They're given arguments and they execute. They don't have kind of like in-memory state, right? You're not running Redis on a Lambda. I mean, maybe there's a way to do that. Maybe there's a use case. I'm not sure. But there's no in-memory, right? Anything we store is going to be stored in Dynamo or a database and pulled out. But the functions are spun up on the fly. And that'll get us into a different area, which we can talk about, which like are cold starts. So because these things are spun up on the fly, the first time they're spun up, they take a little while. And so we call that a cold start. We're not worried about that. Not many people are going to be hitting this API. If they were, it would start to cost money, but we're going to make sure we spin it down before it starts to get there. So you do get free, I think it's 20,000 free executions on the Lambda for the free tier, as well as a certain amount of bytes transferred. And we'll go into that once we start taking a look at the UI. They've done an amazing job with their billing. I mean, rightfully so, right? So many companies use this. To understand the billing is like a whole task in itself. I'm sure there's people who have jobs where that's their job, is to understand the billing of their infrastructure. Anyway, I digress. So we have our functions. We have a function called hello. That's the standard function. It's got a name for the handler, and it has events mapped to it. And this is saying when there's an HTTP event of type get, path hello, execute this handler. What is that handler? Well, that is in our handler TS file. I'm going to pop that up to the side here. You know how much I'd love to do that. All right, check it out. So we have our handler file here. What it is it's a handler. You can see it's importing from API Gateway Proxy Handler. Again, API Gateway is what's converting our Lambda into an API. A Lambda could just be a function, as I just mentioned. It can just run code. You can give it 2 numbers. It can add 2 numbers. That would be a Lambda. But our Lambda is actually serving as an API, so it has API Gateway sitting in front to handle those posts, those gets, the updates, the puts, the deletes, all of the HTTP requests that we're actually accepting to trigger our Lambda. And that's what the events is. That's what's triggering our Lambda. So what we do is we have this hello. It's of type API Gateway Proxy Handler. So it's a very specific type. It's a function, right? It's an asynchronous function. So this is really cool. We're using TypeScript. We're using modern Node. We can benefit from async await, which is fantastic. I've seen this stuff written in Python, and I know I'm biased. I love front end. I love JavaScript. I love TypeScript. I like the way this looks. I think it's so nice to have async await available. I know they have that in Python. There's ways to do it. Just haven't done it. So what we're doing here is it gets two arguments, the event and the context. But here, this is just a very basic thing. We're just spitting out a 200 and a message. Go serverless webpack TypeScript. Your function executed successfully. So let's leave that for now. We're going to give it a shot. So let's see what happens when we push this up. So we're just going to push this plain serverless thing up, and we're going to see what happens. You're going to see it's going to complain about some permissions. We'll adjust those permissions, and we'll go from there. So to do that, what I would do is run Sls Deploy. Very easy. It's going to kick off that deploy. It's going to check my Iam role that I plugged in earlier off screen using the config credentials command, and it's going to tell me whether or not I have permissions to do this. I'm going to need a few different permissions to do this, and you'll see in a second. So the first one is saying it's not authorized to perform CloudFormation create stack. This is very cool. It's saying that this role is not allowed to perform this operation CloudFormation create stack. What does that mean? Well, CloudFormation is how Amazon handles infrastructure via code. It's how this serverless TS is able to be converted from code to actually building stuff in Amazon. What the serverless framework does is it takes this code, passes it off to CloudFormation, says, hey, spin me up these machines, spin up everything, configure it. But Amazon's smart. They're saying, well, the role that you gave that user who's trying to do that, they actually don't have permission to do that because it costs money sometimes when you do that. So we're going to go ahead and give it CloudFormation create stack permissions. And this is what I mentioned before. We're going to kind of whack-a-mole, right? A new permission error pops up. We're going to bop it. New one comes up. Bop. Keep going until we handle them all. You understand? Let's go. All right, so let's pull up our Iam role. So I think I closed that window. Pull this up. Solutions. No, I don't want solutions. Go to my account. I want to go to the console, fancy console. Look at that loader. Bam. Iam, which actually, check this out. This is what I was talking about. They figured out a way to make it easy to navigate this plethora of services. Iam right here. Let's go. All right, so let's find our user. Bam, Brubeck tester, that's our user, part of the group live coders. We're not going to edit the user's permission. We're going to edit the group's permission so that any users in this group will get those permissions. So let's go to the group, live coders, permissions, attach policy. So remember, it was CloudFormation create stack. So we're going to go ahead and search CloudFormation. So we have CloudFormation full access, formation read-only access, deploy role for CloudFormation, deep racer. Yo, what? Easy. Full access. That's it. All right. Whack-a-mole time. Let's try to deploy that again. Let's see what else pops up. You can do this too. You can go through this process if you'd like. Or you can watch me do it like a sucker. And then once I put all the roles in there, you just copy them. When I put this in the repo, I'll put a README. I think that'd be useful. I'll put a README and put like the permissions that I had to give the IAM roles. I think that would be useful. So we'll try that. All right. So now it's going to give us another error. So it's got past that point, right? It has the ability now. Our role can use CloudFormation to create the stack. The next thing you're going to see is likely related to the logging that we're going to use with AWS. I believe it's called Cloud Log. Let's wait and see. It's like a little bit of a process to get these permissions set up, but it's worth it, right? Because it makes us feel secure knowing that we could give someone a role and let them do things. Let's say, for example, you have a developer. Oh, there we go. Let's say you have a developer you want to be able to make changes, but you want to lock deployment down to certain people, or you want to lock deployments that involve changing infrastructure to certain engineers. You could do that, right? You could have a service reliability engineer group. You could have we can call them a DevOps group. You could have a developer group. The DevOps can change the CloudFormation stack using infrastructure as code, but maybe the developers can't. Maybe the developers can deploy handlers, but they can't do that. Or maybe they can't deploy new logging infrastructure. Only this type of person can. Or maybe you have admins that can do it all, right? So now what it's saying is it's not authorized to perform API gateway post on resource API gateway east 1. So we need to give it the availability to use API gateway. So we're going to attach a policy here. API gateway. So we have API gateway invoke full access, API gateway administrator, API gateway push to cloud services. So let's give it API gateway administrator. This way they can create those. And let's go ahead and run it again. While that's running, because I kind of have an idea of what the next one that's going to come up is, I'm just going to go ahead and pull up services. And I'm going to load up Cloud Watch, I believe. Because I think we're going to need that in a second. So I wanted to go over CloudWatch because CloudWatch is pretty cool. What it does is it handles all the logs and monitoring for our services. So it'll show you your service, and you can look at the logs. So if you console log, you can view it in CloudWatch. Pretty cool. But so now it's going to complain about not authorized to perform IAM create role. So we need to create a role. So I'm going to give it access to that. Let's go here, attach policy, IAM full access. We're going to give it IAM full access. And you probably want to be more specific with this stuff. We're actually doing the creation of this, so we're going to need full access. But you want to be more specific, right? You don't want to give very general permissions. You want to give permissions only for what's needed. Again, I'm not an expert. I know that full access worked, and I think that's the one we need. So let's go. Read only definitely won't work, right? Because we're doing some actual write operations, some change operations. And if anyone has questions in the chat, feel free to ask. I'm happy to answer any questions that come up, to my knowledge, right? So some stuff I'm learning, so we'll figure it out together. All right. And so once this is up, what we'll do is we'll actually try hitting this endpoint. So I can do that via curl, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I have Postman installed here, and I don't. So I'm going to install Postman because it's going to be useful later when we start doing post requests, because I just don't like doing post requests in curl. It's just not great, especially sometimes I have to post. In the case here, I'm going to be posting some base64 data, and it just works better. So here I'm going to go ahead and download this. Let's see. I don't want to sign up for full Postman. I can sign in. I do have an account. Let's do that. I'm going to sign in here. And I just want to download the client. Oh, so I can actually do it via web now. That's pretty great. I'm going to download the desktop agent, though, because I really like it. It's pretty great. If you've never used Postman, I highly recommend it for testing APIs. You can create collections, so you can have a collection for a different application. You can have a collection for a different service. Let's say you work at a company or you're just working on a project yourself and you have a few different projects. You can group up services with collections, and you can have all your example requests. You can do tests with it. You can set up fake responses. You can save responses. Really, really powerful. We use it at my current job at Electric AI, and it's awesome. We make sure we test all of our applications with it. When the backend team is finished working on a particular service, they'll send me the Postman, and I'll be able to run it and try it out. It's fantastic. So I'm going to just pull that. I'm going to open up Postman so that we can, once this is up, we can try hitting it. So let's see what else it complained about. Nothing. Complained about nothing. This is great. Look at that. Wow. Very good. Okay. So we're not going to activate metrics. Thank you, Amazon. Nice try. Maybe in a little bit. I do like the service. If I like the service, I'm willing to pay for it. If I'm getting what I like out of it. All right, but so what we want to do is let's try hitting this. So here's our endpoint. Gives it to you right there. It's really awesome. And what we're going to do is we're going to hit this endpoint, and then we're going to go ahead and take a look at the console and look at the Lambda. Maybe we'll do that first. Maybe you want to see it. You want to see it. Let's be real. I know. Maybe we'll view the Lambda first. Come on. You want to see the request. Let's open up Postman. Where are you, Postman? I just talked about how cool you were. Now you're not even opening. What's going on? Let's go. Uh-oh. All right. I get it. I see. Let's see where we're going with this. I'm going to have to do it from here on. All right, I'm going to do it from the web. Let's just not do this. Let's just click this. Paste and get. All right, ready? Blocked because of course. See, because we're from another website. That's why I need the Postman app to work. So let me see, maybe, let's go ahead and do this. Let's remove this. It's clearly not working. And I'm just gonna go ahead and, it's not open. Lies. Okay, so Postman's misbehaving. That's okay. We can curl it. We can do it. We talked about it before. We're just gonna do it. So the way we do that is we are gonna use curl, give it a method. The method's get. We're just gonna paste that. Bam. All right, so we made a request, and here you can see it gives us a bunch of information, some headers, right? But here's the message. Go serverless webpack TypeScript version 1.0, your function executed. Yes, this is great. I think it's pretty great. So we were able to execute our function. We got a response. Now let's check out what Sls Deploy did for us. So I'm gonna go up to my, get out of here, Postman. You failed me. You failed me. Leave. I'm going to go over to my console, and we're going to look at our services. So first, it should have created a Lambda. So we're going to go over to Lambda, and you'll see what it spun up here. So here we have our Brewbook API dev hello. That's this. That refers to this. Hello, the function, right? They're individual functions. There's our hello function. And check it out. It gives you a little diagram. We have our Lambda, and we have API gateway sitting in front. And it even has our code. You'll notice this is not very useful. The reason it's not very useful is because it's minified, right? It's minified because we had written it in TypeScript, and we ran it through the TypeScript compiler. We didn't do it, but when we ran Sls Deploy, it ran Webpack, it ran our TypeScript through the TypeScript compiler, it minified that code, and put it right here. Now, if you didn't go through that process, or if you change your TS config so that it doesn't do this, you could edit your code here. Now, your code doesn't have to be minified here, right? It's sitting and being hosted on AWS. They don't care if your code's minified. It's not being deployed to a client. So if you wanted to do that, what we could do is we can go modify our TS config and make it so that it doesn't minify and obfuscate the code. However, we're not going to edit code here because we want the benefits of working in TypeScript. And this editor just doesn't look as good as VS Code. Sorry, Amazon. Microsoft has you there, right? I wonder if Azure Functions has VS Code built in. I bet it does. I bet you. I bet. We'll find out. But so for now, what we're going to do is we're going to look at our logs. Let's see if anything got logged. So down here, we go to monitoring, up here, sorry. And we have our CloudWatch metrics. So CloudWatch is a service that handles logging. It also shows you all this amazing stuff. Like normally we'd have to configure this ourselves, right? Maybe Heroku and other services would give us some of this. I'm sure they would. But look how much it gives you. So it shows you your duration, how long it took, success rate. We had no errors. Look at that. Yo, no, we have had no production errors on this API. That's sick. I mean, we've made one request and it does nothing. But at least we can say now when we give a talk, we got a conference, we can go up there and be like, we wrote an API on Lambda, had no runtime errors, 0. Perfect API. You can do that. You can say that now. And here you have the log stream of the invocations. So you can see the time when it happened. 8:26. I don't know what time zone this is in because it's definitely not 1:42. So I don't know. This doesn't help me. But let's click the log stream and we'll see what happened. So in our log stream here, we can actually see the logs for the invocation. And some of them are useful, but if we add our own like console logs, you'll be able to see those. But so here you can see the duration, that it started, it ended, and it did a report. Started here, ended, did a report. So super cool. And as we add console logs, this will become more cool. All right, that part's out of the way. Now the fun part. So we have our serverless function. We have it running. It doesn't really do anything. We want to make it so I can post some data, pop that into DynamoDB. So now we have to set up DynamoDB. And for this, we're going to use an online resource and a tutorial because we're going to go through this together. So let's see. So here, this is just an example here of a AWS TypeScript. So this is right from serverless. This is an example of a TypeScript app with Dynamo. So we're going to kind of go in here and take a look. They're not using the serverless TypeScript file. They're using the serverless YAML. That's fine. We can convert this to TypeScript. It's as long as you know how to read YAML and you know what's an array versus what's an object, it's pretty easy to kind of understand. So here is the part about Dynamo. So there's this part. What this is doing is this is creating some actions. So you're saying your role should be able to handle these actions, right? We should be able to query. I'm just going to open this here as a reference. We should be able to query. We should be able to do a get, a post, an update, a delete, and then you have the resource. And there we're specifying the exact table. We don't have to do that. We can specify like any resource, like an asterisk, and that's probably what we're going to do. So I'm going to put this over here as a reference. I'm going to put my code over here. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this, and we're going to open up serverless TS, but not that. Okay, and let's configure this a bit. So first what I want to do is I'm going to change my handler. Instead of calling it handler hello, we're going to call it handler save brew. That's going to be the name of the handler. The method is going to be a post, and the path is going to be save. That's it. We don't need to call it save brew. We'll just call it save. And so here what we'll do is in our handler, let's just go ahead and update that. Our handler will change const hello to save brew. And right now it'll just do the same thing. Nothing's changed there. And we won't deploy yet because we're going to make some more changes. So again, the first thing we have here is our provider AWS environment API gateway. We're going to add some configurations here. So first what we need to do is create a DynamoDB table. So let's do that. So to create a DynamoDB table, again, we can just go over to our, we could have gone over to our AWS console and created it, but what we're going to do is we're going to leverage, oops, sorry, I lost my example there. We're going to leverage this to create our table. So first we're going to create a Dynamo table name. And we'll put that up here. And we'll call it something like Brew API Dev for now, because it's going to be our developer. So we'll call it Dynamo, let's see, table, and we'll give it a name. In this case, they're calling theirs. So they're referencing, you can see here, they're using a YAML to reference self.service. So that references the service up here. The stage, dev, it's dev in this case. And the provider stage, which they've written here as provider stage is, where's that? I thought it was here, but I'm pretty sure it's, oh, okay. So they're saying this or this. So option stage or provider stage. So we're going to use dev for that. So what we'll name ours is we'll follow that same pattern. So we'll do, our service name is Brewbook API. So we'll say, we'll make a constant for that. Service name, Brewbook API, and we'll change this to be service name. And we'll make this a template string of, service name. And then we'll do dash dev. I think that's good. We could say DB or something, but it's the table name, so that'd be weird. So we'll just call it service name Brewbook API Dev for now. And so that's referenced here. And then down here, we're going to actually use that. So first, we're going to create these Iam Role Statements. So you can see we don't have that here yet. So we're going to create a new thing. Also, we want to expose. We're going to want to expose our Dynamo table environment variable. So we're going to do that here. We're going to say Dynamo table. And we're going to just not put it equal to anything because it'll be equal to itself. So Dynamo table will be equal to the value of Dynamo table. Okay. So now what we're going to do is add that Iam role statement. So you can see we have our environment here, right? And then below that we want this just like this. So here they have environment, and below that they have Iam role statement. So we're going to do the same thing. Iam, and you can see it actually gives us that auto completion. And so here Iam role statements actually takes an array, and you can tell because they have this dash thing here. That means it's an array in YAML. So we're going to give it an array. And inside the array takes objects. And so one of the things it's going to have is an effect. And our effect is the string allow. And you can see it had autocomplete there. An action. And our action is going to be an array. And you can see these are all the different actions that we have there. So what we'll do is we will take these actions. I'm just going to copy these. And we're going to put them inside strings. So we'll take all these actions because we're going to want scan, we're going to want to get, we're going to want update. We can remove some. Right now, we're only going to use query scan. Well, we might not use query yet. We'll use scan and put. But we'll do that in a second. So what we're going to do is just put these in strings. All right, there we go. And then resource. And for resource, we're just going to use an asterisk for now. So it's anything. All right, let's close that out. Oh, there's Brewbook. So let's go ahead and do resource. And we'll just make that, oh, sorry about that. Make that an asterisk. All right, so that's our IAM role statements. That's a tongue twister. Woo. Okay, next we want to declare our resources. So here you can see we don't have any resources. Right now we're just using serverless, we're just using a Lambda. We need to add resources. And one of the resources we want to add is a new Dynamo table. And this will tell AWS to set up a Dynamo table for us. Again, I mentioned we could do it via the console, but this is doing it through the configuration so that when we share this code, we can deploy it anywhere. If I wanted to run this code, it would know everything needed for the deploy. It's all contained in this, what we call infrastructure as code or CloudFormation configuration. Pretty cool. A lot of words. A lot of acronyms. It's like being at, like in the core, like we're in the 90s and we're at like some enterprise and we just joined. They're hitting you with like a book and they're like, check out all the acronyms, all the business acronyms. It's like that, but we're going to get through it together. Don't worry. So here we have resources. So let's add that. So resources sits at the same level as functions. See here at the YAML. So we can do the same thing. We're going to just sit at the same level as functions. And again, we could convert this to the YAML, but I'm liking the IntelliSense. I'm liking it. So I'm going to keep it like this. Let's stick with that. Resources. So resources takes an object. The object also is called resources. And that's an object. And in here, we're going to put, we're not going to call it to-do's Dynamo table. We're going to call it Brews Dynamo table. And this is just going to be our name of the resource. You'll see it in a second when we go into the console. And the type of resource, sorry, I messed up. It's going to be like that. And so the type is going to be the same type they have here. Exactly. AWS. I don't know where, I don't know where these strings came from. I literally have been copying this setup because it's a good example and this is what it told me to do on the website. I think if you wanted to figure out where these come from, you would have to look at CloudFormation. Let me just pull it up just to give you, we don't have to dive into it. It's going to be pretty, I think it'll be pretty intense. But let me just so we're not like thinking it's magic. I mean, it is. Like, let's just be clear. It's magic, right? It's all magic. But just so we can see what it is. This is CloudFormation. Infrastructure as code. Look, this is what I look like right now. They knew. I feel seen. This is me. This is exactly how I look. I'm looking at this like CloudFormation space. I look like a stick figure with a floaty head. Exactly. So it tells you how it works. You write code infrastructure. Amazon puts your code into an S3 bucket. I've seen that. I'll show you that. I'll show you what that looks like. It's pretty cool. Runs that through CloudFormation. CloudFormation does magic. Then puts it somewhere. And it's awesome. And it spins everything up. Look at all the people using it. Nextdoor, Coinbase, come on, Expedia. All right, but let's see. Let me see if we can look at the doc so I can show you kind of what we're talking about here. Resources. Look, check it out. This is how you get it. You just, like, how do I know? You just know. You just have to know. You should be in the know. I'm sure there's, show me less. Say less. Say less about this. So I just know because I copied the other thing. But so that's what CloudFormation does. Takes infrastructure, creates code. All right. I'm boring you. Okay. Moving on. Brews Dynamo table. Why is it saying no? Oh, because we have to add the other prop. And the other prop, we're going to get there in a second. So we have our type. And we're going to do the same thing. Deletion policy retain. What that means is, it's going to be a string. I'm pretty sure what that means, and we'll find out. I think it means soft delete. We can look it up in a second, but if I'm going to infer, it means soft delete, meaning that instead of removing the row, it marks it as deleted. But we'll see. We'll see. I don't want to say that, and then you're in the comments and you're like, yo, Tom, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Deletion policy retain. It's not that. Yeah, we'll figure it out. For now, we're just going to go ahead and skip over that. Not a big deal right now. All this stuff we can dive into the docs. We just want to get it spun up fast, right? All right, properties. So here, these are basically defining the properties of our database here, right? So we're going to say our attribute definitions, attribute name. This is like the name of the attribute. Its attribute type. In this case, we're using a string. Key schema, ID, key type is going to be hashed. Your ID is going to be hashed. Read and write capacity units. This is where we get into like what we get charged for. We're going to start with 1. We can always scale up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this. And then we're going to modify it in here. So first we're going to say property. And you're going to see in a second when I set up S3, we're going to be adding more of this CloudFormation jibber jabber. So attribute definitions is going to be a list. And our first object in here is going to be this. All right. And key schema is also a list. And the first object in here is going to be this. Just doing some Vim magic. Don't mind me. All right, there we go. That's our list. And then provision throughput is just an object where we put this. Good, good, good. Separate that by a comma. Toss a comma here so that stops complaining. Change this to this. Toss a comma here. Table name. This part's pretty self-explanatory. Our table name is just going to be that constant. Which we call Dynamo table. Put a comma there. Woo! That was a lot of typing, right? But hey, we're in a good spot. So let's go over what we have. We've added resources. We have a Bruce Dynamo table. It's a type. It's an AWS Dynamo table, right? It could have been something else. Remember, we could be using some other provider. We could modify things. We're going to say it's an AWS Dynamo table, deletion policy retain. We're creating some attributes. You're going to see this in a second. Basically what this means is it's going to be a key value pair. We're going to hash the ID. Write capacity units, read capacity units. We're giving it a limit of 1. This is going to keep us in budget for now. And what is this complaining about? Where did it expect a comma? Let's format it. See if maybe we're missing a. There we go. Bam. All right, so now let's run it and see if it's able to create our DynamoDB table. So to show you what that's going to look like, I'm going to open up my console here, and I'm going to go to Services, and I'm going to go to Dynamo. Your best bet, just search it. Just don't look through the list. Just search it. Ignore the list. List is absurd. All right. So here we have test API dev. This is not the database I've created. This is an existing one I was playing around with. Let's run the deploy and see if we can get that new database created. So let's run Sls Deploy. See what happens. So again, what this is doing, taking my configuration, putting it in an S3 bucket, reading from that S3 bucket, putting that into CloudFormation, right? So serverless is definitely constructing like a CloudFormation style thing from this. I don't think it's using this code directly because again, remember this could be used to do Google Cloud Functions, Azure Functions. So it's going to convert it into CloudFormation style code, run that through CloudFormation, spin up the service. And you can see that here. Uploading CloudFormation file to S3, right? uploading artifacts, uploading service, Brewbook API zip to S3. I'll show you what that looks. I'll show you that S3 bucket. Validating template, updating stack, checking stack update progress. While it's doing that, let's take a look at S3. So for S3, basically, what we can do is go to our services. We can search for S3. There's S3. And you can see the bucket that it created. So I have another bucket here where I made a test bucket. I'll probably delete that. But here is the bucket that it created for our cloud configuration files. Now, there's my serverless, Brewbook API, dev. And here we have the zip file and compiled CloudFormation template JSON. You want to take a look? Let's take a look. Hopefully there's no secret stuff in here. I'm going to be deleting this anyway, so no harm, no foul. Oh, please don't open in. So just a very similar thing to what we had before. You can see it's got a very similar structure, but it's a little different because it converted it, right? It converted it to that CloudFormation style. So pretty cool. Okay, now let's see if our deploy finished. So our deploy finished. Remember we moved our code to here and made it a post. So we could try that out. But what I want to show you is the DynamoDB table that was created. So services, DynamoDB. And we're going to be doing this a lot. Services, DynamoDB, services Lambda, services S3. Because we want to check out what's going on. So we have our tables. And there's our Brewbook API dev table. Really cool. So what's awesome is this console is great. I actually do love this. I use this a lot at work sometimes to check data if I want to look at some data to debug something. And so you can go to items and you can see all the items we have. Right now we have nothing. We haven't posted anything yet. So we're going to write the code to do that in a second. But here at least we have it set up where we can see our database. Pretty cool, right? I think it's pretty cool. So what we'll do is we'll try storing some basic information. So to do that, we need to leverage the DynamoDB API. And I just so happen to have a good example of that somewhere. I believe I stored an article where I was taking a look at that. That's the GitHub serverless provider prop. Okay, so we'll find it together. So basically what I want to do is write the handler so that I can actually query AWS. We'll pull down the Dynamo bucket, or we'll pull down Dynamo, right? And we will, there's like an API, client-side API we'll use. We'll pull that down, we'll use that, and we'll do the upload. So the way we're going to do that is in our handler. So over here in our handler, we're going to modify this function. So we're going to want to accept an input, right? So we're going to want to be able to post something, accept that input, and store that in Dynamo. And because Dynamo is very freeform, right? It doesn't have like it allows you to change the schema on the fly. So we don't need to predefine that or anything like that. Now we can eventually use libraries that help us with that. But for now, we'll just use Typescript to kind of make it code safe. It's not going to be safe in terms of that allowing us to read and write things to the database. We'll change that later. So first things first, what we're going to do is we are going to decide what we want to send. So based on my app, for now, we'll just try sending the brew name, the brewery name, and the style. How about that? Let's just try that for now. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to write a handler to take a look at the event. The event will have the information. It's going to be a post event. And so the way that will come in to play is as parameters. So we can look up an example of that, but I actually have one here that I've done before. So I remember that here we have basically, let's see, let me pull up an example here. AWS Lambda Dynamo tutorial. And we'll pull up and see how to pull these out. So here we go. Okay, so there's this one. This is the one I had up before. Serverless backend. Here's an example. Pretty cool. Oh, good. Okay, so this is a good example. Handler, event, request body. All right, so let's try this. So first what we'll do is we're not going to check for authorization yet. Again, I will authorize this API. You'll probably be able to hit it from if you're trying to do that. I'm going to shut it down basically when I'm not using it, so no use trying there. But for now, we'll try it out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab information from the request body. And so to get the request body, I'm going to do event. I'm going to do json.parse event body. So let's try that out. So we'll say const request body equals json.parse event.body. Thank you, Typescript. And what we'll want to say is we can give the response body a type, or the request body a type. So we can say type request params, and we want to say it's going to have a brew name, which is a type string. It's going to have, sorry, get rid of that equal. I'm forgetting I did this now. Type string. It's going to have a brewery name of type string. It's going to have a style of type string for now. And we'll say that request body is of type request params. And what that's going to allow us to do is destructure it. So we'll say brew name, brewery name, style equals request body. And we can log that to see if everything's working okay. So the way we'll do that is we'll just say console.log, and we'll make a little template string here. We'll say brew name, and we'll say brew name, comma, brewery name. And this will go into CloudWatch, which is pretty cool. And style will be, of course, just style. And I'll show you that once we run this code in a minute. So the next thing we want to do is we want to actually store this into Dynamo. So we need to basically hook into our Dynamo database. So to do that, we're going to pull in a library, just like they have here. We're going to pull in this AWS client library. We're not going to use this style because we can write our nice new code. So we're going to say import Dynamodb from AWS client. And so we probably have to install AWS client, or sorry, it's AWS SDK. And we might have to install that. Okay, so we'll install that. So let's do down here, npm i-save AWS SDK. So this will be pretty cool. All right. So let's see how this is going to go. Okay. So now it's saying, there we go, it's there, but its value is now read. We're going to read it in a second. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to follow along here. Let me just make this, we can subtract that for now. We're going to follow what they've done here. We're going to create an instance of the database. So we're going to say, here we'll do const dynamodb equals new AWS dot, well, we've just actually imported it as, so we'll do new dynamodb dot document client. So now we have that dynamodb. And then what they do here is down here where they're going to use that, they're going to create these parameters. So let's see. They're calling it DDB. So here they have this DDB put, and they're putting these parameters. And you can see in the parameters, they have a table name. We're going to use our environment variable to get that table name. And we'll put the items, and we'll pull that right out of our request body. And we can do some, normally we do some validation, but for now we'll just kind of bypass that. Don't try to put some weird stuff in there. We'll catch you. No, we won't right now. We're just going to put it in there, but we'll see. Let's go to record ride. Let's see where they're calling that. So here they're they're using then, we'll use async await for this. But so basically, we're going to do the same thing. So let's do a check. Let's do a check to make sure they're all strings first. So what is it saying about brew name? It's saying that's not used. Brewery name. Good. All right, so let's just try storing it for now. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, we're going to put this in try because we're going to use async await. So we're going to do try. And we'll need to have a catch error. And on error, what we'll do is we'll console.log the error. Or we'll console.error it actually. And what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to have a way to send an error back to the client. So I'm going to just make a helper function here. We're going to call this send error response, or we'll call it get error response. And this will be a function that takes in an error message of type string and simply returns a response that looks something like this. And a lot of this boilerplate code you can reduce. Obviously, if you're using a lot of these Lambdas, we're going to have utility functions, and you can build that out. You can easily make that happen. I'm actually, at my current job, they're talking about even deploying like a web framework onto Lambda, which I have not done, but we'll see how that plays out. But for now, we'll just make a helper function here. We're going to write all our code inside this handler to make it easy. But then, yeah, we could always break this up. We could have multiple files, and we'll see that. But so we're going to have this handler. For the message, we're just going to pass it error message. We're going to ignore that. We're going to ignore that. And we don't need to stringify it. Oh, we'll stringify that. But so we'll leave the body. And status code will be 500 for now. So that's just so we can easily get an error message. And so here we'll do that in our error just so we can send something clear. We'll say return get error response error. So now let's do our happy path. So what we want to do is we want to say data equals DynamoDB. So first we'll create our params that we want to use. And so our parameters are going to be similar to what they have there. We're going to have our table name. And our table name, we're going to grab from our environment variables. So the way we do that is process.env.dynamo table. So that's going to pull from environment Dynamo table. So we don't have to think about it here. And then our item is going to be brew name, brewery name, style. We're just going to use those keys. I like that. It's fine. And so what we'll do here is we'll pass the params to dynamo.put params, and we're going to convert that to a promise. So we can use await on it, or we could have used then on it, but we're going to use await. And if we have our data, we're going to go ahead and return our data. So you can see here they're calling record ride, they're using promise, but then they're doing a then. We're going to do something similar, but we're just going to return, basically, we don't actually even need to return our data. What we'll do is we'll return the representation of our items. So what we'll say is return status code, and I like the autocomplete that's giving us there. It's a 200. The body is going to be json.stringify, and we'll stringify our in this case, we can just stringify our params.item because we're just saying, hey, we've successfully stored that. And we don't need to modify the headers, I don't think, right now. I think we should be good just doing this. Let me see here what I did. Let's see, headers, console. So that's here they're handling the message. That's good. And then here they're doing, let's see. right, there we have that. Let's see, we have message, status code. So this should be fine. Let's stick with this. Let's see if it works. So we don't need data. Get rid of that. We're just not using it. We could look at data and return something from there, but for now we'll just handle this. Okay, so let's go over what we have and see if we can ditch this now for sure. Oops, sorry about that. All right, so we have save brew. It takes an event. It pulls out from the request body. We're going to do some validation in a second, but just to test that it actually works. We have our console log. We're logging it out. We're going to try grabbing our item. We're going to try putting it in our Dynamo table. It knows the table name. Our Iam role, right, is going to be associated with our account. It can hit this table. We're going to try to put those parameters in here, and if it's successful, return this. If it's not, return the error. That's why it's in a try catch. So let's go ahead and let's SLS deploy that to put that code up there into Lambda land, as we're calling it. I'm calling it now. And what we'll do is try running it. So there's a few things we can do here. If Postman worked, which I don't think it did, let's try opening it again. Maybe it just doesn't want to work right now. So in the meantime, since that's being annoying, what I'm going to do is I'm going to install another thing that's really nice, which is HTTP. It's similar to curl, but it has a nicer interface. I've used it before. I will show you what it looks like. So it's got a nice little API. So you can do HTTP post, the URL, and then you can just post parameters like this, and it'll put them in the post body. So it's pretty cool. So we'll use this for now until Postman should figure itself out. I'm not sure what's happening with Postman. Seems to have failed. Let's try reinstalling it. It might just be my OS version's old. We'll see. So let that install there, and let's see how our deploy is going. So our deploy is complete. Here's our new URL. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait till this is done, or let me check. Let's see if let's move that to applications. We're going to replace it. Postman agent's in use. All right, so let me try killing the Postman agent. Don't see it. I see Postgres. All right. Not sure what's happening there, Postman. Postman kind of just died on me. Okay, there we go. Now it looks like it's opening. So let's wait and see. There we go. There we go. Thank you, Postman. All right. So let's see how this goes. Open. All right. Let's see how this behaves here. And while that's happening, let's go over here. What we're going to do is we're going to look at our table. We're going to get ready to see if it actually writes to it. Before we do that, I want to look at our logs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Services, CloudWatch, pull that up over here, pull CloudWatch here, and let's pull Dynamo over here. And so we're going to look at our Lambda. We're going to look at our Brewbook API. Monitoring. We'll see that in a second. And let's see, did Postman open? No, Postman failed once again. What is going on with you, Postman? And Homebrew is also not liking. All right, so let's just do it with curl. I'm just going to do it with curl. So I have to Google how to do that. I forget. I know it's -x post, but I forget how to send the parameters. So let's see. All right. Oh, -d. So it looks pretty straightforward. Let's try it. That's not too terrible. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to send a post to our URL here. Let's try it right down here. So we'll do curl -d. And it looks like when specifying multiple D options in the command, we'll concatenate them and insert ampersands in between. I like that. So let's do brew name equals. Let's do the crisp. Then we'll do brewery name equals 6 point. We don't need quotes. And then we'll do style equals Pilsner. And then we'll paste our, well, let's give that a shot. Internal server error. Let me try something really quick. It might have to do with this. Just want to see if that's what it's doing. Okay, so internal server error. So let's look at our logs. So here we go here. We refresh to get our new invocations. I could also click the refresh button down there at the bottom. All right, so this should be, I think this is the old request. Let's see, let's refresh it. I think that's the old one. Let's see if it even got our request. Oh, let's see if HTTP is there. Okay, great. So we can use this now. So what we can do is HTTP, we'll do the same thing. We'll say that, we'll make it a post. Let's see if it's just me messing up curl. Totally a possibility. So let me actually clear this. And we're gonna do HTTP post. And then the HTTP documentation says that we basically send it -f post. That's for submitting forms. So we'll do that -f post. And we'll put that. And we'll submit like that. So let's try that. Post, and we'll paste that, and we're going to send it brew name equals the crisp, and then brewery name equals 6 point, and style equals Pilsner. Okay, so I gotta change that. So we'll just do like this, see if this works. Okay, we'll just do brew name equals. Brew name equals the crisp. There we go. Okay, so internal server error. So let's take a look. Error from CloudFront. Bad gateway. All right, so let's take a look and see what's going on. So this successfully deployed. Our function is hello. So it might be the case that we have to change our, let's make sure we properly mapped our function name too. So in our serverless, we have our hello function. Okay, so that's our hello function, but it's referring to our save brew handler. So that's good. So let's take a look at what happened in CloudFormation. So I don't see our invocation. So let's see what we have here. So it says application error from CloudFront, internal server application error. Okay. So let's 502 bad gateway. So let's see. It might just be an issue with our endpoint. Okay, let's make sure we have everything set up right. So the method is post. Let me see here. Method is post. That makes sense. Let's see with our provider. We have our name, our runtime, stage. Oh, we specify our stage as dev. I've done that before. Let's do that. That'll help maybe. Dev. We also, what we can do here is specify our region. Let's do that. That would be NA. I believe it's US East 1. I'm looking at my reference here. And then we have our environment, Dynamo table, put item, get item. We might have used the wrong. We did DynamoDB put, that's correct. Resource, we have the right handler. I think that should be good. So let me see. Hello, there's that. Hello, save. Should call save brew. That should be correct. And this should be right. Table name, Dynamo table, ID, save, retain. That should all be correct. Brew's Dynamo table. And let me see. We might have to do cores true, maybe here. That might be the issue. To allow cross origin. Other than that, I think that might be all. Let's try deploying that. Yeah, so I'm not sure why this wouldn't be working, so we'll find out. We'll figure it out. If not, I can reference. I tried, like I mentioned earlier, I tried doing something similar before just to make sure I can get this stuff set up, kind of. And this usually worked. Let me see. Let's look at some other examples. Make sure we're on the right track here. So the interesting thing too is you can see the errors now. We lost our no errors in production. So maybe we can. I'm surprised we can't see the logs from this. Okay, there we go. There's our invocations. Great. Okay, so now we can at least look. So here, let's click this, and let's see those invocations. See if the logs can tell us anything. Okay, very cool. All right, so let's take a look. Syntax error. Ah, awesome. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Unexpected token B at JSON position 0. Webpack handler TS 23. So let's take a look. Maybe we messed something up. Handler 23. Ah, probably here. Event.body. Is that correct? Did we use the wrong thing? Let me take a look. So we're parsing event.body as request body. That should be good. JSON parse. Maybe our body is messed up. And then we are... Let me try this. Did we mess up by adding the -f in the beginning there? Is it not form data? We just want to post it. So we have brew name. Brew name. Let's just send the crisp as one word just so we're not. We got style, Pilsner. Let's just try this again. HTTP. Ah. All right, there we go. We got a little bit of different code here. So now our code is validation exception. One or more parameter values is invalid, missing the key ID in the item. We didn't provide an ID for the item. That's valid. So we need to provide an ID for the item. So we want to create a unique ID, or we can make an ID from our brew name brewery combo like we did on the front end. That could be cool. But let's just create a unique ID for now. So one way that I usually do with unique IDs is I will import, I believe it's UUID is one thing I can use. So here, let's go down here and let's go to terminal. Let's see, where's my terminal? I'm going to import UUID. So there's a library we can use, UUID. That'll help us create a UUID. And so UUID has different versions. Version 1 should be fine for now, for us. Just creates a unique ID. So what we'll do is we will, up here in our handler, import star as UUID from UUID. And now we will actually leverage this UUID. So we'll do that in our item. We'll pass it an ID. And that matches our serverless. Remember, we said that it has an ID. And so we'll do UUID v1, I believe, is what we need. Maybe it's .v1. There we go. So let's try that now. So first we'll have to deploy it. Again, remember we need to deploy it because we're making a change. So this is the one difference. We're not having like an easy local, test it and try it. There is a way to do that. So you can set up things locally to test them locally. It's very easy to do with if you're just using pure Lambdas. Because we have Dynamo set up, we need to set up a local Dynamo. And there are ways to do that. One that I've heard of is something called local stack, a fully functional local AWS cloud stack. So you have DynamoDB. These are all the different things you can test locally. I haven't tried it. I know we use it at my current place of work at Electric AI, but I have not tried it. So we will see. Okay, so there we go. We have our thing. Let's try making that call again. Oh, did I type the wrong thing? I did. So I messed up this. Brew name, save, brewery style. Let's try that. Internal server error. Okay, let's see what we're getting now. So now again, we know we can look at our logs. And we can see what's going on here. So I'm going to go back here. I'm going to refresh. This might be it right here. Okay. Let's see. Yvette is not defined. So it's just a typo issue. So let's go find that. Right here. Messed that up. All right, so let's just do a quick scan and see if there's any other errors that Typescript's showing us. Nothing, so we'll do Sls Deploy. And if any of you have not used Lambda, a lot of people may be saying, or like kind of not thinking about not doing it because it might cost money. That is true. AWS Lambda does start to incur costs, but we're kind of under that free tier. We're doing it as like a hobbyist, almost like a dev. So we're not going to hit that incurred cost unless you all start hammering this API or something, which is why I will shut it down when I'm done. But basically, if you're doing under 20,000 requests, right, you're not going to hit that cost. And even once you get past that, it's not going to be a huge bill or anything like that. So if you're doing it for hobbyists, you can get most of this stuff done for free. And the pricing page, the billing page, will tell you how close you are to the point where you start getting charged. And for something like this, it's going to be pretty tough to get to that point unless you're making a lot of requests, sending a lot of data, storing a lot. And I'll make sure that I don't get to that point. But very cool and something to consider. And I can actually put these routes behind authentication, which would be the smart thing to do so that no one can just hammer the routes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say Sls is deployed now. I'm going to try running that code again. So we have our brew name, brewery name, Pilsner. All right, so there we go. It looks like it was successful. It returned to me a brewery name, an ID, and the style. Let's take a look at our logs and see if it logged that information. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to our logs here. I'm going to refresh, click the latest invocation, and so you can see here, brew name undefined brewery 6-point style Pilsner. So it didn't get the brew name. We can take a look and see why that was. So it might just be the console log didn't log brew name. So it's for some reason didn't get brew name. It might be because of the command I ran. Let's see if I messed it up again. Brew name, that should be correct. Yeah, it didn't return it here. So something happened there. Let's see. Brew name. We were passing it brew name. All right, so let's see why brew name didn't go through, and let's try to redo that post. So I'm going to just repost that up, and so something's getting messed up here. So let's go ahead and delete that. Brew name equals let's just go ahead and delete this here. All right, so we'll do brew name equals the crisp brewery name equals 6-point, style equals Pilsner. Missing authentication token, that's because I messed up my API name there. So something's getting messed up. Hold on, let me just type this over so we don't get this messed up. So I'm just gonna pull it here. I'm just gonna type it here. So we're gonna do HTTP post to this URL, brew name equals the crisp, brewery name equals 6-point, style equals Pilsner. Bam. All right, so we're good there. Let's check our log. So we're gonna go back to our logs. Again, we're in CloudWatch. We're gonna refresh, click the latest. You can see here, brew name undefined. For some reason, it's still not getting that. We'll have to look into that. Actually, this might be the old log. Let's go back. Refresh again, 35. So this might be the new one. Sometimes it takes a little while for that to appear. But let's look at Dynamo. Let's see if it stored the appropriate thing, and then we'll really know. So over here, what we can do is go to our Dynamo. Again, DynamoDB. Click our database. So you go to tables. We have our Brewbook API dev. I'm going to go to items. Oh, I see. There they are. The crisp. There's the bad one. Let's delete that. We can go to actions, delete. And there's our item. Hell yeah. We got one item stored in a database. Great. This is cool. We still have a few minutes. Let's try to pull the item out. And then we can start using it. The other thing we're going to want to do is store an image. And so that's going to get interesting because that's when we're going to start introducing S3 for that. We'll get into that in a minute. But let's try pulling our items. So for that, we're going to need a new handler. So basically what we'll do is we'll create another handler here. So we'll change the name of this one to, instead of calling it hello, let's call it save brew. Or we'll just call it save for now. And we're going to create a new handler. We'll call this one get. Or we'll call this one brews. And we'll call this one save. So for brews, instead of save brew, we're just going to call it handler. We'll call it get brews. It's going to be a method of get. And the path is going to be brews/get. Same thing. Or we can just do /brews. That'd probably be the easiest. And cores is true. And so now what we'll want to do is open up our handler and create a handler for getting the brew. And so what we're going to want to do there is create a new function. We're going to have to name our function get brews to match what our handler expects there. So we'll do export const get brews. And it's going to be of type, the same type here. And it's going to have the same function signature, so we can just copy that. And what we can do here, that's our type signature. Just put that there. So now what we're going to want to do is get all of the brews from our endpoint. And so this is saying we still need to return something. We will do that in a second. So for now, what we'll just add this to appease the TypeScript gods there. Status code of 200, and we will just post a message of getting all brews. Okay, so now how do we get the brews? So the way we can do this is we can use a scan of our Dynamo table. Now normally we wouldn't want to do a scan. Scans are very inefficient. What they do is they get everything from the table. And so if your table is long, you're going to want pagination. But it's okay for us for now. We don't have a lot of brews, and we do want to get all of them. But at some point, we would want to do a query. And a query is something like a SQL query where you can say, get me all of the brews by this partition key, or get me all the brews by ID. A partition key is something that Dynamo uses to group like things together. So you can imagine us partitioning on brewery. So you could say, get all the brews for this brewery. If we did want to do a get all brews from a database, if our database got quite long, we'd want to paginate that. And Dynamo has ways of handling pagination. And it's pretty nice. So we'll get into that later, but for now we'll just do what's called a scan, in-place scan, and get all of the data. So let's go ahead and do that. So for that, what we're going to do is we will do a try here. We want to wrap it in a try catch because we're going to be hitting Dynamo. And so let's put our error, and we're going to do the same thing here where we're going to say, and we might want to have, again, move some of this stuff to a utility, but what we're going to do here is we're going to console.log error. And then what we'll do is we'll return get error response with the error. And then what we're going to try to do is we're going to do an const data equals async, and we're going to call dynamodb.scan. And we need to, I believe we need to give scan the table name. So what we'll do is we'll say const params equals, and it's similar to what we have below, where down here, params. And we might be able to even get the type of this. And here we're going to do process.env, again, to get from our environment variables.dynamo table. And so we might be able to say, let's see if this actually is a thing we can do. Can we type this? Dynamo db params or something. So I don't know what the, we could figure that out, but for now, let's just not worry about it. So this is saying, just go ahead and scan this table, and we're going to pass params here, and it's going to return a promise, which is why we have the await. And sorry, we don't want async, we want to await. So this is going to return a promise. We're going to await. This function needs to be asynchronous. Oh, sorry. I also realized we wrote this in get error response and not get bruise. So let me just move this out. All right, there we go. So now what we're going to do is we have our params, we have our try, we got data here. If it fails, we're going to return a failure. If it's successful, we're going to go ahead and return a status code of 200. So we'll kind of just copy this and we'll just modify it. Status code 200, body, and we'll go ahead and send, so similar to what we have here, where we're doing body JSON stringify params item, we're going to go ahead and our body is going to be JSON stringify data. All right, so let's go ahead and delete this and let's see if this works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run Sls Deploy again to deploy this code up to our AWS server. So again, I'm not managing this server. I'm not deploying a Heroku. I don't have to worry about that. It's just an Amazon. Beauty of that is if this was a real application and we need to scale. So for example, we needed to start loading up servers. We got a lot of load. We went from maybe no users to 10 users to 20 users to 20,000 users. It would know how to scale. And we would pay for that, obviously, as it goes on. But it scales efficiently. And it just handles load without me having to think about it, right? And that's really one of the real benefits of Lambda. The other benefit is I'm just writing functions, right? I didn't have to write all the routing layers. I mean, I had some routing layers here. You could say that this is me writing the routing, but I didn't have to run Express and do all that stuff and set up Node and then have a container to deploy it and deploy it on Heroku and configure all that. It just lets me do this pretty easily, and it's pretty extensible. I can keep adding functions. I can put them in, I can divide them up into different files so that it's not all cluttered in one file, and that's something we might want to do. But now it'll have the benefit of I have an API that I can hit, I can add authentication to, and I can start making requests to get my data. And now I can hook this up to the front end and make some of this data populate. Okay, so now it gave us our new route. So let's just go ahead and hit this route. So there we go. It returns a count of how many items. Scan count, that's like how many we actually got from our entire scan. So like how many it found, how many it's returning. And then our items. So it's an array and there's one of our brews. So pretty cool. So we have a database now for storing this stuff. Now, one of the other things we need to store though is the image, right? We're gonna want a way to store the image. Now we can hook our front end up to this right now. I think we'll save that probably for next session. let's try to use the last few minutes to get image data here. We can do this a few ways. For one, we can just upload, for now, raw base64 encoded data. Bad idea. Just probably not a great idea, right? So the other thing we do is create an S3 bucket. An S3 bucket will host static content. And then when we take in a brew, we can paste base64 encoded data. So we can say, hey, here's your base64 encoded image. Take that, pop that into S3, get a nice public URL for that image, return that to the client. So let's set that up now. So the way we're going to do that is, I actually have the code for that because it was kind of a pain to do, just because I had to look it up a bunch, so I just stored it here, is we need to add an S3 bucket. So first what we'll do is we'll go to Services, S3, create a bucket. So I have one from before. I'm going to create a new bucket. We'll call it brew book. All right. We don't need to copy any settings. Keep that the same. We're going to make everything public because we're going to want our we're going to want to allow certain routes to be public so we can actually see our, we basically want to be able to see our brews, right? So let's do that. Create bucket. All right, so there's our brew book bucket. I can upload objects here. But so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and start using this. So the way that this works is you saw I had here this provider change. So I'm going to go ahead and add this. This is going to be important to allow our role to actually upload to S3. And so the way I found this is I had done some Googling. And, oh, sorry, this is going to go in here. I'd done some Googling and saw this. Remember I said I didn't know where this this part came from? This just came from some Googling. It's the cloud formation for setting up AWS. And then S3 bucket, I'm just going to go up here and add a constant for that. And that's just going to be, hold on one second there. That's just going to be the name of the bucket. So constant S3 bucket equals brewbook. And so the benefit here is we have our S3 bucket set. It's just going to be brewbook. And what we can do is now we can specify that down here. S3 bucket. And so that's saying, okay, we have access to this resource. We can get objects and we can put objects here. And we can even do kind of like what we did above, where we have this separated on different lines. So it looks the same. All right. Oh. It likes to do that. Okay, that's fine. We'll just let it stick with that. So now what we need to do is we have our S3 bucket here. We need to actually be able to upload to S3 now. So for that, and again, what we're going to do is we're going to take base64 data from the user of the image, upload it to S3, get the URL of the image, right? And then store that so that when we get it to the client can just use that URL to render the things in place. That's the general idea here. So first we need to establish an S3 object. So I'm going to go ahead and do that first. So we can actually get S3 from Dynamo. And then we can initialize an S3 object here. We can just call it S3 equals new S3. All right. So it just creates a new S3 instance. Very simple. Ooh. And then what we're going to want to do is I'm going to create another function called upload to S3. All right. And so what upload to S3 is going to do is essentially upload the image. So we can even say upload image to S3. And so what this is going to take is it's going to take the image data. So it's going to be like encoded image data, base64 encoded. And we're going to need an ID of basically where we need an ID to name this thing. And that'll be like the brew. We'll leverage the brew ID or some form of identifier. We could use the brew ID because we have that. So we'll see. Okay, so uploading the data. So basically what we want to do here is we're going to get some encoded data and an ID. So first, if we don't have that, let's just do a quick check. If there's no encoded image data, because sometimes we're not going to have an image, and that's fine. Or there's not an ID, let's just return, and that'll return null. And then what'll happen is when we go to store that in Dynamo, it'll store null there, or none. So nothing will be stored, and that's okay by us. Otherwise, if there is image data, we're going to want to pull it out. And we expect the image data to be base64 encoded. This will definitely error out if it is not base64 encoded data. So we may want to wrap this in a try catch. So let's do that. And let's put the error. And we'll console.error, the error. And then what we'll do is we'll just return. Otherwise, so here's what we want to do. We want to grab that base64 encoded data and create unencoded data. So basically what I want to do here is use what's called a buffer to do this. So what we can do is we can say decoded image equals, and so this is going to be of type buffer. And so I think what we want to do here is buffer.from coded image. And we want to say that it's base64. I think I have, let's see if we can search what this looks like. Decode base64 image JavaScript. All right. And so, okay. Right, we want to take out that portion. Okay, let me see. I think I had a good tutorial on this. Upload base64 to S3. There was a good tutorial I had looked at. Yes. Thank you, Devion Main. He was the one that posted this. Yes, this is exactly what we want. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and kind of copy what they have here. So this is exactly what I want. Base64, because what it'll do is that base64 data has a header, and it will make sure it has that first, right? So that'll be good. So let's do that. I'm going to copy that. Thank you for posting that, Davian. Let's give this some claps. We got to sign in, because if we're going to leverage this, got to give them the claps, right? We got to give them props where it's due. They're helping us out. A few claps there. Yeah. Okay. So that's exactly what we want. So we want that. And yeah, we want the file type too. So I'm going to copy both of these. So here we're going to have our and we'll call this decoded image. And it's buffer. I'm just using Typescript. And we don't have base64, we have encoded image. Okay. And here we do type, and this is going to be encoded image. This is going to be our decoded image. What is this saying? I feel like this is just like a weird issue here. I don't think I need new. I think I just want buffer from. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So buffer from type. This will get us the image type, so PNG, JPEG, and so forth. So what I'm going to want to do now is basically create a file name for this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say const file name equals, and we want to give it a path. So I'm putting mine inside brew images. Let's give this a template string. So we do brew images, and then we're going to say we'll store it at /id. And then we'll say, we'll give it the path, and the path will be the type. So dot, and then the type. All right, so that'll be our file name. And now to actually upload that to S3, what we're going to do is we're going to create our S3 upload params. Let's log this too. To upload, and we'll put file name. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And so what we'll do here, we're getting close on time. Let's see if we can get there. What we'll do here is we will say S3 upload params. We'll just call it upload params. And so here what we need to do is we're going to give it a body, a bucket, a key, and I think he has it here. Body, yeah, body, bucket, key, content encoding, and content type. So let's do the bucket. So first things first, our bucket is our process.env.s3 bucket, and we're going to want to add that to our environment variables here. There we go. There's our S3 bucket. Oh, sorry about that. And so now we have our bucket. In this example, we need our key. For our key, what are we using for our key here? Our key will be our file name. Yeah. File name. Body is going to be our decoded image. And content encoding is going to be base64. And then our content type is going to be, this is correct, we need to say image slash and then the type that we are using. Okay, so we have the upload params, and then basically what we need to do with the upload params is we need to call S3 upload. And so what we'll do is we will wrap that into a simple try catch. It's going to be important because this could fail. We will do the same thing here if it fails. And so what we're going to try to do is we're going to use that S3 object that we had, and we're going to try to upload our data. So the way we're going to do that is we have to basically take, you can see here, upload promise, similar, we're going to basically do the exact same thing here. So we're going to say S3, so we're going to await this, S3.upload, upload params, we can just call this params. Params, and I think we'll have to have a promise. Okay, let's try this, see if this works. So we're gonna upload it. What does it return? Location and key. Okay, that's kind of cool. So we can take the location and key and return it, or we can just return we can return the file path. That would be probably nice to have. So for that, what we'll do is the way the file path works would be a template string, and the way it's going to work is I have my notes here. It's going to be https:// then the name of the S3 bucket, which in this case is process.env.s3 bucket. And then what we'll do here is, this is pretty common. This is just how it looks like S3 setup. We say s3.amazonaws.com/ and then the file path, or in this case, file name. All right. And let's return that. And so we'll return that. So now we have this function for uploading to S3, and we want to call that down here in our regular upload. So we're a little bit over time, but I think let's try to see if we can get this going. So back down here in our save brews, we're going to want to pull out our encoded brew data. So we'll take that out of, we'll call that brew image. Brew image. And you'll see here it's complaining because it doesn't exist on type request params. And so we'll just update our type. going to be a type string. And so let's go down here. So now we have our brew image. And so what we're going to do is we're going to say, we're going to want to wait. So we'll say const brew image path equals upload s3 brew image. And we need to give it an ID. So the ID we can give it, again, the ID is going to be used to basically reference, like it's going to be used as the file name. So what we're going to do here is we'll basically pass a brew ID. Like we'll take a brew ID. So we'll take a brew ID and we'll use that. So let's modify our brew params. And then eventually what we'll do, because we have that brew ID on the front end, we'll start using that and we'll pass that. So we'll take a brew ID that's a string. Save that. Let's go back down here. And so we have our brew image. We'll give it the brew ID. We're going to await that because, again, that's an async function, right? So we look at upload s3. We're going to make this an async function. This way we can have our await down here. Okay, so we have our async function. It's going to wait and return that. We're going to wait for this here. We're going to take our brew image path and we're going to return it here. Brew image equals brew image path. We're going to store that as the brew image. And then when we return it here, it'll be returned. So now we should be storing the brew image. Okay. That's a lot. Let's try uploading it. Let's first check if there's any errors that are visible right here. Let me just clear this. Let's look and see if there's anything visible here as far as errors. I don't see anything. So let's go ahead and upload this. Deploy it. And what we're going to do is we're going to try to get Postman to work again because it's much easier to send base64 data if we have Postman. And that's because we're going to have to, it creates a lot of, basically a big file when it gets created. So I'm wondering if the reason Postman's not working is because I'm on an old version of OS X or something. We shall find out. I'm going to try to load it up again and see what happens. So look, I have this up here. Let's quit that. Try opening it again. Okay, so we move it to the applications folder. Gotcha. Now can you open? All right, so let's see if this opens up. And so what we'll do is we'll make a request once that opens and try to actually, okay, so it looks like it's trying to open. Move to application folder. Yes, we're fine with that. I'm going to open up my applications folder. Let's go to Postman. Double click. I don't see it loading. Okay, there we go. Postman quit unexpectedly. Gotcha. I see this here. Definitely don't want to launch at startup. It won't even launch right now. Let's check for updates. Maybe there's an update required. All right, that's not working. Let's quit that again. If this doesn't work, what I'll do is I'll just get an alternative. I'm wondering if it probably has to do with my I don't know, operating system version right now. So let's just try this. Let's search for Postman alternative. Sure, there's plenty out there. Ah, I've heard of this. Insomnia REST client. Let's try this. Let's check this one out. Insomnia REST client. Let's go to their site. Pricing. All right, let's download it. Let's try this. This is all we need. All right, let's see if this works out. And so what we'll do is let's see if our upload succeeded. So it looks like it succeeded. We're going to try using this. We're going to try posting our data. So let's open up Insomnia Core. Let's see if this works. If it does, Great. I really would like to get Postman working. I'll work and debug that on my own. I don't want to waste too much time there trying to do that on your time. So let me just open this up here. Check out Insomnia. Hey, try a new tool. Let's see how this works. Hopefully this one works. Verifying Insomnia. And while we're doing this, I'm going to go get a picture and base64 encode it so that we can leverage that. So I'm just going to search for the crisp. Actually, let's do a new one. I had this beer the other day. Fantastic. Really, really loved it. So I'm going to use this one from Hudson Valley. Shout out to Hudson Valley. They're great. I think I use this one in the Brewbook app. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy this image address, or let's save it to my desktop here. Oh, where'd it go? Save this here. And I will go to a base64 encode image. Just go to an online one. Base64 image encoder. Brilliant. I'm going to drag the image here. Bam. It's going to encode it. And we'll do this programmatically encode on our app side when we get there. I'm going to copy the image. Let's open up Insomnia. New request. Let's call it Save Brew. It's a post request. Okay. So for the body, we're going to go ahead and select the body type. So we're going to do JSON for now. And we're going to say our brew name is Monomyth. Our brewery name is Hudson Valley Brewing. Our style is sour double IPA. And our brew image, which I believe is we're calling it. Let me just double check that in our types. Brew image, and we'll send the brew ID. So our brew image is going to be our base64 encoded data. It's going to take a little while to paste this. Bear with it. Bear with it. Let's see if Insomnia can handle it. Ooh. Uh-oh. Can it handle it? We might have crashed it. Okay, there we go. So you can see it's a lot. There's other ways to do this, but you can see Insomnia is kind of choking on this. Postman didn't, although, Postman didn't open this time, so Insomnia has that going for it. So let's see. Hopefully this will work. Let's see what's going on here. So it's having a little trouble. Understandably, it's a big thing here. Okay, so it got it. There we go. It's big. It's huge. It's a big file. And so we also need brew ID, which I should have typed first in hindsight. And our brew ID, let's just give it an ID like what we do on the front end. So Monomyth dash and the brewery name, Hudson Valley. Actually, we probably should put Hudson Valley Brewing first. For now, let's just go with this. Or here, let's fix it. Hudson Valley Brewing, Monomyth. Okay, great. So now we're going to go ahead and put a comma here, and we're going to paste our URL. Save. All right. Moment of truth. Send it. It's going, it's going. Whoa, look at this. Look at this. Look at this. ID. Oh, you can't see this. I apologize. It's probably super small on your end. Hold on. Let me make this a little bit bigger. So I made the request. It sent it. It generated an ID, a brew name, Hudson Valley Brewing, and this brew image URL. So let's look at what this looks like in Dynamo. Let's see if it actually stored it. So we'll go over to our Dynamo. So, let's look in S3. Let's see if it actually uploaded it. So let's refresh S3. Ooh, brew images. Oh, what is this? Let's go. There's our beer. Click it. Let's open it. So you're going to get access denied. That's okay. What we're going to do is we can make this folder public. So what I'll do is I'll go to Brewbook, I'll click this and I'll make public. Now we'll be able to actually access these brews. So now when I go to click that brew in a new tab, let's go. Obviously we won't be storing huge images like this. We'll be storing thumbnails and things, but this is pretty cool. So let's check Dynamo and see if it actually stored it in Dynamo. There we go. There's our item, and we can delete this one because it doesn't have the image. Awesome. So we have data being stored in Dynamo. That's it for tonight. To go over what we went and did, let's walk through that really quick. So we started out, we had the idea of uploading data to an AWS Lambda API, storing that data into DynamoDB, and we did it all using serverless. So let's walk back through that really quick. We had our serverless scaffolded. It's scaffolded out this serverless TypeScript file equivalent to a serverless YAML. It's configuration. We went through our configuration, followed some tutorials. We're able to get this going, deployed this, got our AWS user set up with some permissions, whacked those permissions one by one, got this deployed. We set up 2 routes. One for, saving the brews, one for getting the brews. And again, you can repurpose this to whatever you want. This is just kind of to show how we can get AWS set up with Dynamo. It was there were some weird things. I think it's still a lot for me to figure out the cloud configuration or cloud formation stack stuff. But the tutorials online help, and there's a lot of useful resources. So thanks to anyone who put those out there. So we got that ability where we're able to get the brews. We're using a scan to just get all the items from our Dynamo table. We saw how to put environment variables so that we could leverage them. We saw how to look at the logs. And so all of this is running in Amazon. We don't have to think about the servers. It will scale up naturally as requests start coming in. We're not expecting requests to this, right? This is just for testing. But now what we can do is we can hook up that app we made. Instead of using that data locally, we can now pull it from Dynamo. And that means we can get it from any device we're on. We can sync to the server. And so that'll be really cool. So in the next series, what we'll do here is we will try hooking up our app to this database and see if we can pull that data live. That'll give us the opportunity to try sending the data, receiving the data, writing the code to handle the asynchronous fetching of those brews, and leveraging Recoil and seeing how Recoil's asynchronous story works, Recoil.js. But so again, this was setting up an API with AWS Lambda, DynamoDB, all using Node and TypeScript and the Serverless Framework. So I hope you enjoyed this. I'll be posting on YouTube. We will definitely be diving in more in future iterations. Below, you can see my Twitter URL. Follow me on Twitter. I'll be posting when I go live. The GitHub URL is there as well. My YouTube name, you can see here, is just the YouTube channel there. It's just my name, Tom McGurl. I got my GitHub URL, Twitter URL, Twitch URL. Follow me on there. If you like what you saw here, feel free to follow me on Twitch. Be super happy. If you like it, if you want to watch it on YouTube, you could watch it whatever playback you want. We're going to be doing more one-off sessions like this. So I had fun with this one, setting up AWS Lambda with Dynamo and Node. I'm excited to try some other different ones. We're thinking about doing a one-off session on writing a memoize function, a one-off section on building a portfolio site using Gatsby.js. I think this one was a good one to start with because it kind of ties into that Brewbook application that we've been building in our series that came before this. Those are also posted on YouTube, all 7 episodes there. We might pick back up on that next week and kind of attach it to this API. I think that'd be pretty cool. But yeah, hope you found this useful. Again, I'll be on Tuesdays, 9 p.m. Eastern to 11 p.m. Eastern. Today we went a little bit over, but I think I'm pretty pleased with the result. So yeah, thanks everybody and have a good night.